Before I get to Jay Goldberg from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation and his stories of excess, please donate, keep us on the air, because you aren't going to hear these stories through mainstream news, which is paid by the Prime Minister's office. Now, speaking of excess, the donations as well are not spent on foolish things like, Jay, what is the government spending money on these days?
Well, we've uncovered that Global Affairs has spent over $700,000 over a year and a half period getting bureaucrats tickets to fancy shows like Cirque du Soleil, fancy shows like Come From Away. So over $700,000 over a period of a year and a half, while Canadian taxpayers are struggling to make ends meet. You've got fancy bureaucrats at Global Affairs dropping thousands and thousands of dollars to go to these shows and have a good time.
But let me bear down on that. If they were going, if some deputy minister was going with his or her counterpart from the States or from Britain, that would be called diplomacy and that would be okay. Is that what we see?
Well, that's not what we're seeing, but quite frankly, given our financial situation, diplomacy should be happening at a Denny's having pancakes as opposed to costing us thousands and thousands of dollars. I think Canadians are fed up with the fancy diplomacy when you're going to shows and dropping thousands of dollars in a night.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, but I just wanted to clarify that it wasn't so much in the pursuit of some goal between governments. It's just people having a party.
These are dozens and dozens of people. This is not one deputy minister. And actually, if it was one deputy minister spending $700,000 on shows, we would have a lot of other questions.
Well, that's true, and but they have their own separate budgets as well. And actually, as far as diplomacy goes, if it was at a coffee shop, it might be better because people say we're getting down to the guts of it, the nitty-gritty of it, as opposed to the swankier things.
Well, because these are just elite events. These are events that elites go to. The everyday people who are barely making ends meet can't afford to spend thousands of dollars to go to a show, and they expect their leaders, their bureaucrats, their politicians to level with them to experience what they actually experience and relate to their lives. And we're just seeing the complete opposite of that out of Ottawa.
Well, also with the Prime Minister's jet, we've seen the figures of the huge amounts of jet fuel.
Well, Mr. Environment, Mr. I have to raise the carbon tax so you can't heat your home is jetting around the country, jetting around the world like you cannot believe, and it's hypocrisy on a level that I don't think I've ever seen before.
And yet, out of New York, on the Colbert Show, where our Prime Minister went on the late night show, he did admit that Canadians are having a very difficult time buying groceries, making ends meet. He said, I get that, which is why they're angry at me, but I'm not going to change any policies.
I'm not going to change anything, and I've been in there for 9 years. All you hear is blame Stephen Harper, blame Stephen Harper. Nothing is his fault, and that's the ultimate thing I think that Canadians are tired of. Out of Ottawa, you've got politicians spending money left, right, and center and saying, nothing's our fault. Inflation's not our fault. High taxes isn't our fault. Deficits aren't our fault. Nothing's our fault. Just vote for us again.
Jay Goldberg, you've always got terrible stories. I'm glad you bring them up. Thank you very much. 3 minutes. To those of you who have subscribed and donated, a heartfelt thank you. You're keeping us on the air. If you're watching and you haven't, please try to do so, because 4 years ago we started this show because there needed to be independent analysis. Now more than ever, with the Online Harms Act, once that gets into law, it's been passed once by the House, there are going to be hundreds of bureaucrats censoring the news in Canada, censoring this show. We need to keep it on the air. Thanks for your support.